I've lived 1,000 lives. I've piloted 1,000 souls. I've killed and fought and died just for another role.
This is the Happy Jacks RPG podcast, a roundtable discussion that's a mix of friendship, humor, unbridled enthusiasm, and tabletop RPG topics sent in from around the world.
Just for another role.
Hello, and welcome to Season 33, Episode 23 of the Happy Jacks RPG podcast. My name is Kimmy.
I'm Pooja.
I'm Jay.
And in today's episode, our topic is creating cities and location flavor by basing them on something real or something you know. Our emails, Verk from DC asks about being a PC leader in a campaign, and Heavy Metal Jest asks about combat in Kids on Brooms. If you'd like to contribute a question or story to the show, you can email us at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. That's happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. And you can also add a topic or email into the mailbag channel in the Discord, and that's happyjacks.org/Discord. Announcements. The next game days was yesterday, sorry. So it went really well. Bunch of great games. Fantastic. It's always so much fun to watch all the different games as they prep over the week and then run, and everyone just had a really great time. A Deep Space Nine promenade game was, I think, my personal favorite for this time. No offense to everybody else, but I was really excited about that one. And the next one is actually going to be JackerCon, our full weekend of gaming, which will be happening in July. So, July, JackerCon, whole weekend of gaming. Stay tuned for more information soon, very soon. And GameX is happening next weekend. I can't believe it's next weekend. I'm totally pretty. It's fine. Next weekend at the Hilton LAX, May 24th through the 27th, which is next weekend. We'll be doing our live show on Saturday night, so we will not be doing the live show Sunday night here like normal. We will have the cacophony that is our live show on Saturday night at 8 p.m. Pacific time. Jason's going to be doing a Demigods book signing. He's actually going to have the books for sale there, he tells me. And so it'll be a lot of fun. If you actually want an in-person copy of Demigods and you weren't a backer, I think the backer books have been sent out already.
The backer books have all been posted.
Okay, perfect. I'm I know they've been packaged. I've seen evidence and helped with that. But okay, they're all in the mail. So if you haven't gotten yours yet, he has fulfilled that part. He's not selling them before he sent them to backers. He was very particular about that. But now the things that he had, the leftovers that he has, he is going to be selling in person. So come to the as seen on Happy Jack's co-op booth, and you can get your own and get it signed. Very exciting.
Great.
All right. Indie Designer of the Month. Our Indie Designer of the Month is still Stephanie Bryant, who also will be at the As Seen on Happy Jack's co-op booth at Strategicon this next weekend. This week we're discussing her game Threadbare. And this is an amazing game. If you haven't heard of this game, it's been around for a little while. It's like the indie darling. Threadbare is the RPG is a role-playing game in which you play a jury-rigged toy in a broken post-apocalyptic world with no humans. Caught in a world where entropy is a constant danger, you'll patch yourself up, invent new devices, and maybe make new friends along the way. So it's like Toy Story if it was like Mad Max kind of.
There was I hate not to
No,
do
yeah,
the
go.
subject or anything. There was a puppet movie, I think maybe about 10 years ago, called Kuki Returns. Kuki. That gives this gives me those vibes.
Nice.
You can still find the trailer on YouTube. I highly recommend it. It looks really cool. I actually never got to see it, but yeah, this game certainly I might do that and get some inspiration for it.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of not like body modification that happens in the story too. As a toy, as you get damaged, you're like, oh, okay. If I start off as a softie, like a teddy bear, and I'm like trying to climb a wall and I fall and like my thread gets pulled out, so I lose my arm. Then I found an old baby doll arm, so I'm gonna sew that on. So as you go, you like modify yourself. So the rules and mechanics are based on the Apocalypse World engine. You roll 2d6s and add your modifiers, etc. And as you progress in Threadbare, your character changes. Every time you are damaged or repaired, you change your descriptions and even your personality. And you can get that for $9 on DriveThruRPG.
Awesome.
And it has one of the coolest covers on any RPG. It has a badass kind of stitched together teddy bear riding a T-Rex toy. Like, It's amazing. It's very cool. It is not like combat heavy, which is why I like it's very much like Toy Story, but like without the human and civilization elements. You're like Toy Story in the wasteland where you're trying to survive together. There is some, you can do combat, but it's like one roll combat. And then you're just like trying to get through this together. It's fun. I really like this game.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and actually part of it, you don't have to play this way, but like if you play as written, you actually have a toy that you bring with you and you modify it as you go. So, because Stephanie's a crafter. That's one of
I
these
love
good
that.
friends.
That's
Yeah.
really cool.
So, like one of the elements, you don't have to do that, but it's written for you to have something that you are drawing or stitching or cutting, or as you're playing this toy, you're modifying them as you go. So at the end of the campaign, you have like a keepsake to remind you of this character. So, and like I said, $9 on DriveThruRPG. All right. I feel like I'm talking so much. I went to the Renaissance Fair today. I'm very tired. I saw Stu.
Yay!
He says hello, everyone.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was very fun. We talked for a long time. And then my daughter was like, I'm ready to go now. Can we go see the petting zoo again? Okay. I'll see you later. All right. Topic from Jeff. Now, this is actually an actually that I changed into a topic. So thank you, Jeff. So I always get the cities in D&D wrong. Everyone knows this is not a surprise. So he was like, actually, Neverwinter is more like Detroit of Faerun, while Waterdeep is the New York City. Neverwinter's last population count in the official book was around 24,000 people, while Waterdeep supposedly has around 130,000 people living within the city proper and claims upward of 1 million people under the protection of the city who are tax-paying citizens. Well, I pushed up my glasses just for you as I did that. But this kind of got me thinking about, I mean, like the most common touchstone we talk about like often in comic books is Metropolis and Gotham City. And like which one's which and which cities are these, and like Coast City, obviously that's, we've got all our Star City. Like there's all these different ones that are very clearly like just a real city with like
analogs for like, actual world locations.
Yeah. So like, do you do you do that take when you're like GMing or describing somewhere, or if you're as a player, you're the one who's introducing a place? Like how do you, if you are making locations or cities and games, like what do you base them on?
I don't ever base them on anything because my imagination is just really so super fired up that I don't need details from the real world. No, that's an absolute lie. I can't even count how many times I've set a game in Los Angeles. My locations are either Los Angeles or a city like Los Angeles because I know it well. And generally the people that I play with also know it. Mm-hmm. So they're like, I can say like, okay, you're at this intersection and this intersection. And they'll be like, oh man, the traffic there's horrible that time. And I'm like, yes, it is. Little roll of complication,
I feel attacked, like an inside joke, because our studio / my house is between two of the most dangerous, awful intersections in all of the greater Los Angeles area.
What is the Vineland language?
No.
Oh
No,
yeah, my mistake.
Nope.
Sorry. Strike that. You know what, everybody?
We're fine.
Just forward
Anyway,
another 5 seconds.
but yeah.
So
It's wild. There's really bad like intersections, and everyone always like jokes about it when they're coming to the studio about how they almost died.
You just gotta come in the other route.
Yeah.
That's
The
what I
other
do.
route.
But you got to tell me where that is because I have to drive every day. It's so bad. All right.
I usually base, like, I find that actually basing stuff in Los Angeles can get very, like, nitpicky in the groups I've been in. It's like you get that fun level of, like, oh, traffic's really bad at that time of day. And then you also get, like, people who are just really getting into the granular of, like, intersections and houses and, like, and then the tangent of, like, oh, and I used to live over there and this and this and this. And so I find that using real cities that everyone is super, super familiar with can kind of backfire. But that being said, like, I had a game in New Orleans. I used a real map to orient my players, but I was also the only person who was actually super familiar with New Orleans. But I like to bring in elements of cities that I'm really familiar with because it takes a lot of load off of when your players turn left and everything is set up for them to turn right. And you're like, cool, I know exactly where I can go with this and at least, like, buy myself 5 minutes of autopilot while I describe where you're going. I ran a City of Mist campaign that I ended up basing a lot of the, like, neighborhoods in the city, like, kind of pull details from the book of you know, the city and here are what the neighborhoods are like, but, like, pulled in from different media properties that I was interested in at the time. I was like, oh, okay, well, this newspaper building, downtown newspaper building is going to be, like, it's going to hold, you know, this particular type of character, and therefore it's going to, like, have these kinds of elements to it as well. Like, I let the characters kind of inform the kind of places that they would be staying, which is nice in a big metropolis.
Yeah.
Because you're like, hey, cities contain multitudes.
Yeah, especially really big cities. I especially I think about LA. Like when I've played in games that were expressly in LA, especially like our Demigods game forever ago, and things like that. Like, I don't know what it is about LA people, and probably New York people too. I can see people like getting in the minutia of the city. And yeah, we sat there joking about, oh, that taco place, and I'm sure people were just like, we don't care. Please stop talking about the taco place. But
Look, if your neighborhood doesn't have a taco truck, you're really missing out in life.
yeah. I mean, it's really, that's why we love LA. We pretend it's for the beaches and the sunshine, but it's really just the amazing taco trucks.
Tacos, yeah. I feel like we Los Angelinos feel about tacos the way New Yorkers feel about pizza, or that's sort of the depiction.
Everybody's
of
got their truck.
Yeah,
Everybody's got their truck.
Yeah, or their stand, right? Their taqueria somewhere. Yeah.
I think I saw like a weird article this week though that like I think it's like Sweden or somebody eats more tacos than anyone else, other than like actual like people from Mexico.
Yeah.
But it was like I was like, what?
Huh?
What's? No, we will have our day.
yeah.
But
where's the data?
yeah, I don't know. I'm sure, but it was like the best thing. It was, I think, or maybe it was Norway. It was one of the very happy countries. It was like all the best things. Like they drink more coffee than Americans. They eat more tacos than anyone except Mexico. Like they just like had the best life. I was like, I want tacos and coffee. I mean, I have those things, but I don't know. But anyway,
I love them in Sweden.
The happiness of the you know the Scandinavian folk. That
exactly. I find that I tend to grab specific things. I don't do as well when I'm describing neighborhoods based on things. I'll grab like a statue or a terrible intersection or, you know, a park or something like that kind of centers things that I can describe because I can see it in my head. And then from there, it's easier for me to kind of just like come up with other stuff. So I don't know why my imagination kind of works that way if I like root it that way.
Well, that's a really interesting, like, awesome tip
Mm-hmm.
that it's like you don't have to pull an entire neighborhood. You can pull and you can build your, if you don't want to say pull something out of real life, like figure out something that this area is based around. That touchstone, that, what do they call them? Cornerstone
Yeah.
of what this location is going to have. And make that something fun and interesting, and it can be whatever you need it to be for the story or whatever you think will be fun. And then the details kind of like organically grow out of that. And that's really great. It's a really great way to, like, if you're trying to come up with something new, it can be really daunting to say, like, oh, I don't want to set my game in Los Angeles because of all the things that we just talked about. But I also don't want to set it, like, just in, like, you know,
Generic
podunk, whatever.
Yeah.
What is going to be interesting about my town? What is going to be, okay, I'm in a fantasy game and I don't want to set it in generic English countryside. But what is the touchstone of this country? What is the touchstone of the nation I'm creating for myself? Okay, well then what regions have, like, what are the touchstones of the regions? What are the touchstones of the towns? And, like, so you can go from, like, big to small, or I want everything to take place within this one inn. It's a bottle episode, y'all.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, like, what makes that inn so special? Like, I just find that kind of stuff amazing.
I love that.
Yeah.
For our first episode of Star Tape, I think I was joking with you about this at the before the actual session started.
Yep.
So I'd taken my daughter to Butterfly Day. I don't know if I actually said it in the episode or if it was just before the episode. But if you've already heard this story because you watched it, if you haven't, go watch it and see if I told the story already. But there's a place in LA called Topanga Canyon. It's like very hippie, like organic food, like the whole kind of like that kind of LA vibe is Topanga Canyon. They have a thing called Butterfly Day for kids. So we took my daughter, and they have butterflies, and these are all the native plant life, and this is all your gardening you can do organically, and like just like amazing stuff. People selling like high frequency crystals and like things like that, like all over the place. She had a great time, and she got some little butterfly wings. It was fantastic. But like I was like there, and I'm like, okay, I'm starting my Starscape today, so I'm like sitting as we're doing all the butterfly activities, which are riveting if you're over 5. And like I'm sitting there trying to think about like what where we were gonna start, and I suddenly was like, oh, I'll make like hippie Topanga Planet, and like that's where we kind of ended up starting. And I actually didn't use the one thing. I'm gonna weave it in somewhere else, but there was this lady playing this giant harp, but it was like I don't know, it was like 20 feet long. Like it was like a harp that was like spanned across. Like at first it looked sort of like telephone wires. And like I totally thought it was fake at first. And then she actually started playing it where she was like pulling on the strings, so it caused friction with her hands that made it like vibrate across the whole span of like this thing. And I'm just standing there in awe, like, this is going to be my game. This is amazing. Like, it's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. And I'm not sure it's real, but it sounded really cool. And she had like this background track, and it sounded like, I don't know if you're, those of you who are old enough to remember the Discovery Store, and it was like the meditation music with like the forest sounds in the background. And then like it wasn't like panpipes, but it was like this giant weird ass harp thing that she was playing. But it's just like the weirdest things, like go weird places and you'll find weird things that will then spin off, so you don't have to do any other planning for your first session of a game, because you're like, well, all I have to do is do this except with like aliens, and it'll be great.
Yeah. I think what really strikes me about that, like in general, pulling details from real world locations that you're familiar with or that you just feel really strongly about, is that generally like you're a little more enthusiastic about portraying the things that you love. You know, things that really draw you or that pull you. And your descriptions and your actions within them can just get so rich. And so, I don't know, there's like a genuine fondness. Like when I play those games with folks about, you know, with my friends here in LA, and when we're going someplace that we're all familiar with, there is, you're right. It can get bogged down in minutia, but there is also like this genuine joy when people are like, "Oh yes," you feel that bond that you feel that you can only really feel when you're creating a story with a group of people, right?
Yeah.
And to me, like my favorite thing is exploring places in new ways too. So, New Orleans, same thing. You kind of put your twist in it. You think of a place that you've seen before, and you explore it in ways that maybe just can't happen in real life, right? Like, oh, there's this secret network of tunnels in city XYZ, and they connect to this place, and little did you know, there's a whole civilization under there. And it just kind of reframes the way people think about the city, or the location in general. My personal, like, I have two locations that I draw from primarily. It's either going to be Los Angeles, or I spent like a good chunk of my life in the Berkshires in Western Massachusetts, which is a pastoral, beautiful town.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because when you mention Neverwinter, whose last population count in an official book, I would imagine like around 1494 or 1498 DR, whatever. DR 1490, whatever. Anyway, it was 24,000 people. A city. I spent a lot of time in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, which is a small city, and it's got like 30,000 people, I think, as the population. So when I see that number of people, you can see it. I can like picture in my head. Oh, okay. So this is this is how dense the neighborhoods are going to be. This is sort of what the big city area is going to be like. And it helps. It, like you said, it does a lot of heavy lifting, and if you're actually setting it in a real life location, you've got a map, you've got a common dialogue to share. And even if it's not something your other players are familiar with, I think it's a lot easier to be evocative and really kind of give them a tour of that place and have them experience that place too.
Yeah. I think population, that's a really important thing because a lot of us, even if, you're from a smaller place, like it's hard for us to picture how small a lot of like medieval places were.
Yeah.
Like even if you're from a town of 5,000 people, that wasn't a small town. And like there would literally be like 100 people maybe in a village or something like that. And
survival ability rates just weren't that great back then.
Right. And it's just interesting because I've been listening to, I love history documentaries. So I've been listening to like the history of the Plantagenets in England in the last few weeks. And one of the things it was describing was like it was describing London, like at the time, like between like 1100s and 1300s. And like, it's like, wow, this is, and like the person's going there for the first time as like she's going to be the princess and the queen. And like, oh, she was blown away by this huge, and it's like this very small number. And you're just like, oh, wow. Like, it's even having been to London, having like, knowing what I do about history, we tend to automatically put things in our vision of what things are. So really, I think little details like that, even if you have to call it out, if you're like, okay, you've gotten to the big city in this fantasy, kingdom, it's got 50,000 whole people. That's like, okay, who here has been to blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And you're like,
who's been to SoFi Stadium on a packed day?
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, that's like, who's been to the Coliseum on a game that no one gave a crap about, so only half of it was full.
Exactly. It's like, that is the big city there. Yeah.
Maybe even more people.
Yeah. So I think like we've kind of been talking about like skinning something, but honestly, like just calling out straight examples is a good way to like give people perspective and knowledge about things.
Yeah. And especially when it comes to like when it comes to numbers, it's really hard to visualize what like a small town with like 2,000 people looks like. You need that kind of reference.
Yeah.
Or at least I do. It does not come naturally.
No.
Yeah.
Especially if you have spent like your life like watching CW shows and stuff about small towns where there's constantly new people showing up all the time. That's not what it's like necessarily. Like, I mean, anybody who shows up is a big deal. but they don't show
That part is realistic.
Yeah, that part's realistic, but they don't show up every season. Like a new person every season. And, oh, a beautiful new person. Look how beautiful they are. Everybody's beautiful in this tiny little town. Having been to many family functions in Oklahoma, I can tell you that's not always how that works. All right. Cool. Are we good?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Moving on. Mailbag number 1. I don't have to read this. I'm gonna read it.
Oh, this one's a good one. Hello, Empress Kimmy and her Jacker court. Recently in a Game Days game, the evil GM, it was Rose, forced me to play a commanding officer in a military squad type game. It was just a random roll, but it sounds better that she forced me to play it. Small amount of backstory. I don't play very often. Like at all. Without the Happy Jacks Discord, I doubt I would ever get to play. I basically only GM. So the times I have had to play a leader, captain, prince type character is absolute zero. The game starts, and I realize I have no idea how to do that. How do you be a commanding officer without giving orders? Giving orders is easy, but who wants to be told what to do in a game? So in character, I started asking what other players wanted to do, but then it felt like I wasn't actually playing the pre-gen correctly. Was I overthinking all this? 100% yes. Does that change the weird feelings I was having during the game? No. Shortly into the game, my character failed everything they rolled, and that made it easier for me. Now my character could have a crisis of leading and become a self-doubting person looking for someone else to lead. I think I should have just done that at the beginning. I think I ran my character badly. I think I didn't add to the fun because I didn't know how to interact with the other players as a leader. The game was fun and the other players were great. Rose ran us like she stole us and it was awesome. But I just feel like I need to be prepared better for that in the future. So what do you do when you have to play a leader type character? Verk from DC. P.S. Drink.
Huzzah.
P.P.S. Join the Discord.
happyjacksrpg.com/Discord. So when I'm a leader in a game, I put up with it in Vampire for a number of years, get very frustrated, vent about it only when we're not actually playing, eventually kill my character off, and then play someone who has absolutely no responsibilities and is actively trying to ruin everything. That's how I handled it.
Honestly, I think you're being really hard on yourself. I mean, it's a whole mood. I understand that.
Yeah.
But especially when you're talking about, like, pre-gens, the loosest interpretation. Did you play a character that had those stats?
Yeah.
Did you play a character that technically filled that role in the game? Yes? Okay, you won. Congratulations, you did the thing. I am sure you had a wonderful time with everybody, whether or not, like, you were in a situation that was unfamiliar to you, and you were like, oh, yes, I don't know what to do, but you found a way through it, and then the roles helped you out there, and you pivoted into something that made more sense to you.
Yeah.
And that's what everybody does with pre-gens in a one-shot. Like, nobody goes in and is like, yes. Well, that's not true. I mean, I'm sure some people do. But, like, it's really, really common to have that kind of, like, bit of finding your footing, getting your sea legs, whatever metaphor you want to insert here, and then roll into it.
Yeah. This is a thing that I talk about a lot, and there's not like one right answer, I don't think, but I am a big proponent now, having had bad experiences with it, that games that require players to give commands to other players or be a leader or anything need to have mechanics and clear descriptions of how to deal with it. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's like Vampire, where if you're in charge, you just have to enforce it and you just kill everyone else or whatever. And you have to make sure the players are cool with that. Or if it's a military game like this, like there needs to be a role or a mechanic or a contest or something or whatever it is, an in-game currency where you can give orders to somebody else. And then if they do it, great. If they don't, like whatever happens, happens. It always gets awkward, at least in my opinion, when it's just left up to role playing, and there's not any rails to guide that.
What you were saying actually makes me think, like, one of the things in a military squad game, like, yes, you have the super hierarchical, everything that I say goes kind of military hierarchy that we often see in media. But the flip side of that is something that you see more often when you're talking about fantasy hierarchies and fantasy squads, is that the leader does not operate in a vacuum. The commanding officer has a group of people who are informing what commands they give. And that is one thing to lean into in a game like this, where maybe the rules for giving commands isn't quite as... It's not about what that player wants to do, but what information do they have and what opinions do they have about achieving the common goal that would then inform the orders that your character gives.
Right. So the thing about leaders is that they are not everything, right? Like, if they were everything, they could do everything. If a leader could fill every role, they'd be a one-person team.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think, I agree. The thing to lean into is, and I know it's hard, when you get put into a leader position, there's a lot of pressure to fill the role, but not take away another player's agency, and not railroad a player or the rest of the table, or even your GM, into kind of filling a prescribed role or doing a prescribed path, right? But if you focus on the other players and what they're good at, you can be the kind of leader that goes, okay, tactical, what can you tell me? Demo, what are the best parts? What's the best way to go about doing this? That kind of thing. You can like really you can shine the light on other players as well.
That's like the Picard table conversation.
Precisely, yeah. Or the bridge conversation, precisely, exactly.
I mean, it's the whole thing, right? It's like, okay, well, when you look at, like, especially, like when you have a rogue squad or a squad that's going off on their own in a military situation, like in a piece of media, like, you always have one person who's really good at intel, one person who's really good at survival, one person who's really good at demo, one person who's really... And then you have the leader who's kind of like maybe a face, maybe. But what they're really good at is, like, herding these motherfucking cats.
And kind of making the final decision based on everybody's input, right? First of all, Verk, this was a tough situation to kind of be thrust into. No shade on anybody or anything like that. But it sounds like everybody had a fun time, and it sounds like you didn't impede anybody's fun time. So that's awesome. Yeah. That's great.
I wanted to keep pulling at the thread of, like, that conversation. This is something I've been struggling with a lot, because with Starscape, the game I'm working on right now, goldenlassagames.com/Starscape, or /Kickstarter, or whatever. Anyway, because this,
next week.
I've been pulling at this a lot because my original designs of it, there were moves to give orders to other people. And then I pulled those away, and then I've been sort of like changing it. And I actually had a really interesting conversation with Mark Diaz-Truman from Magpie ages ago about this, because he was like talking about this is a vital part of, like, Star Trek fiction, is giving orders to each other. And the whole thing we came up in the conversation is, like, the difference between an RPG and shows or fiction that's, like, military-esque. I know Star Trek isn't technically the military, but it's kind of the military. Is when you're writing fiction, you can write ways out of things. When you're improvising at a table with someone who, ostensibly, the player underneath, you don't want to hurt their feelings either. Like, you can write a scene where someone disregards an order or pushes back and has an argument with Riker or something like that, and know how it's going to go, and know that you can come to a conclusion where they don't have to get court-martialed or sent to another ship or demoted or whatever later. In a role-playing situation, you don't have that perfect foresight. You never kind of know what's going to roll out at the table, even if everybody has the best intentions. You don't get to write the ending first and then go backwards from there and construct why it was okay after all that they broke that rule or whatever like that. And for sure Riker's going to be okay with it later because you wrote you wrote the scene for them. So there's a lot of things that people think about that are in fiction that don't necessarily always translate well to the game table. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Does that sound weird?
No, I think that sounds accurate.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that, like, I would also say specifically for Starscape and for more generally for role-playing systems that, okay, if you are playing in a Star Trek RPG, it is going to follow Star Trek conventions.
Yeah.
Because that is what you go into it for. But in a game like Starscape or in a system that is more about like genre rather than a specific IP, you need to be able to accommodate more systems than that. Yeah. Like more tropes, there needs to be more fluidity. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, it can be awkward that there aren't like specific rules for like and consequences all the time for military. Oh, are you going to disregard this order? Mm-hmm. But I feel like it opens you up to a lot more variety in play.
Yeah.
Than, okay, well, I am the leader character, therefore I do this move, therefore this happens, which over the course of a one-shot is like not a big deal. How many times are you really going to do it? Mm-hmm. But over the course of a campaign can start to feel monotonous and kind of frustrating.
Yeah. It can be hard too in those moments where it's like, okay, we're being fired upon. There's not really time to have the bridge meeting or the ready room meeting or whatever it is. Adam, when we did our Star Trek Adventures AP years ago, he became the captain. He was really excited because he's a huge Star Trek person. And he talked about it like sometimes after the game, he's like, this is really hard. Like there's times where it feels like I should be like stopping and like talk and making sure all the players like this idea and stuff. So maybe that's one of the things you can do. Maybe there is like a pause button where you pause being characters. And then you're like, okay, this is what I'm going to do as the captain. Is everyone okay with this? Like, and it's very meta, but it might be a way to kind of keep everyone happy and then in the fiction still keep the narrative of the captain making commands. I don't know. Would that ruin things for people?
I don't think so. No, I mean, personally, not for me, certainly.
I'm never gonna be against using what is basically a safety tool for the intended purpose.
Yeah, exactly. Just communicating, checking in. Yeah, that's always a good thing, if you ask me.
I'm just trying to come up with a couple like things that people could tack on no matter what the system is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully, like I said, like I hope games that require this should have some sort of mechanic for it. But I don't know.
You know, that's interesting because that is something I very rarely see covered in any RPG.
Yeah.
You know, there's always talk about, you know, make sure everybody gets the spotlight sometimes, make sure that you're not hogging the time from other players. But there's never really, because inevitably in any game, well, not inevitably, but like oftentimes somebody will fall into a leadership or a face position for that matter, right? And that can end up really dictating the direction that the group goes, whatever system you're playing. I think that is something that should be kind of covered at least in a couple of paragraphs. You know, hey, if you think if this is going to be, if one of your players plays a soldier, even if you're not in a military party, but their general conceit is that they're used to giving orders, try doing this, make sure that, that they understand X, Y, Z, they understand this, that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's why the kind of given premise of a lot of games, like D&D being the main example, like everyone's got their role, even if you are a face character, really rich, or like a politician or royalty or something, like there's always, at least generally, there's like a depowering that happens. Like you're not going on this campaign with your party members and your full guard. So that, if you, piss me off, I'm just going to have my guard beat the crap out of you. Or things like that. There's like well, you might be the face character, but you're out of your palace now, little prince. Like,
Yeah.
so suddenly it's like they have moments where they have like the advantage and they're in charge, but everyone has those moments to shine. And like an official command structure or like the prince or whatever, like you don't have those moments. It's like you can send someone to like be an enforcer, but if they fail, then that's a failure on you. And like, there's just all these little things where I think that's why, despite so many vampire games eventually getting to someone being a prince, like that's not generally like the suggestion. Like you're supposed to be kind of like low down in the hierarchy of the vampire kingdom. And then that way you're all kind of scrappy, trying to help each other get up to the next level. Once you start making those downward decisions, it gets much more complicated at the table for the GMs and everybody. And I don't know. I don't know if there is like one right answer. I mean, there's never one right answer, but definitely safety tools in general, which I don't know if we need to go in because we've talked about those a lot. But yeah, a specific pause mechanic or where like there's a meta vote maybe.
Or, I mean, as something that Bumbletree just said in the chat, like, I did the OC checking when I was a captain, and players told me that I was breaking the fantasy and just relaxing captain. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's it. Check in with your table about everyone's level of comfort at the start. And sometimes people are going to be like, yeah, let's do the pause button. And sometimes people are going to be like, you are the captain, just captain.
Yeah.
And either way, you've covered your bases there. It doesn't always have to be one or the other. It's obviously going to be situational to the people you're playing with.
100%. There's always that vibe, though, especially like with Star Trek stuff. Like I totally sympathize with Adam. Like Star Trek captains always like, not always, but like the captains we love, like do the right thing like 98% of the time. It's like, so you want to be that epitome of a person doing the right thing or what they're trying to do the right thing at all times and blah, blah, blah. And then I know there's some Star Trek, don't at me, but, so you want to always make that right decision. And I think that might be part of it too, is like embrace that you're not going, there's a lot of things that we didn't see in, Picard probably went on a lot of missions we never saw. Maybe he screwed them all up. Maybe we only saw the good ones in the show. So like bring down your expectation bar of like when you're the captain or when you're the commanding officer of always making the right decision and lean into if I make the wrong decision, it'll be interesting for all of us.
And people think that the captains always made the right decision, but they really, really didn't, because the show would be a lot less interesting if they did.
Right.
Like, you can go back and look at a bunch of times when they made the decision that made the most sense to them at the time or aligned with like their values at the time, which was not the best decision to make in the moment. So
Yeah.
Be that captain. Be the most interesting captain. Be the most interesting captain in the world.
Wow.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to be. I mean, this is also something that should be communicated ahead of time too. Maybe led by the GM, or maybe even led by the player if you feel so proactive to do so. But talk about relationship, the leader's relationship with the other characters.
Yeah.
Am I the kind of leader that you will follow blindly? Or am I the kind of leader that you don't agree with most of the time, and there's going to come a breaking point when you're just not going to listen to me, and let's play with that drama. You know what I mean? And being the leader that doesn't necessarily make the right or the good decision, but makes the difficult decision.
Yeah.
And relish the challenge of that, and the drama of that within the game, and the conflict that might generate. And obviously we're all in it to have a good time, and you don't ever want to fall into the PvP trap, because that is never as fun as anybody thinks it is.
I mean, that's another thing that just depends on the table.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I hear
a lot
you.
of people are really into that, or like that kind of conflict can become like a breaking point for character relationships and things like that. Like story-wise, I think it can be really interesting to play with those
Yeah,
moments.
no, you're not wrong. Yeah.
So I don't think like blanket PvP is always bad or PvP is
yeah.
always physical.
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. No, absolutely. And really, what it comes down to it for me is that if you do really have to have a good, solid, trusting group to be able to pull that kind of thing off.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And knowing the fallout from that.
Yes.
Like, if you're like outranking someone in a vampire game and you'd go and like just slice them to pieces, everyone's like, hey, good job. Okay. Yeah. Maybe we should respect them. You know, that's a very different scenario than if someone, and we keep going to Star Trek, so we'll just keep with it, like goes and punches like their first officer.
Yeah.
Like that's a totally different thing. That's a pretty much like, you probably won't be able to, like, I know it's happened on shows, but like honestly in the fiction that you're probably not going to stick around on that ship for very long.
Yeah.
Like, is that something where you have to figure out a way to deal with that, and there's a lot more consequences to that than like murdering someone would be in Vampire, you know?
Yeah. I think having a little foresight also helps. Now you mentioned like screenwriters, novelists, other, storytellers. They have ways to write their way out. Like if you're going to go that route, think about ways that you might be able to steer your character towards coming together with the party, overcoming adversity. Which is always I mean, not always, but I mean, it can be a very satisfying arc to tell.
Yeah, and you can ask first if you're, because like there's times where we assume things at the table and it's like, okay, if like Pooch is my commanding officer, we play chess every other Thursday. I think we're best friends. It'll be great. And I'm like, okay, and if I as a player just assume that our players are going to be cool if I, disregard her order in the middle of combat because we're friends, and she has a different understanding of her character, then like just making that assumption without talking about it first can be a problem. So I think having that conversation. So if I turn to them and I'm like, okay, I'm thinking of doing this. How would your character react if I did this? And it doesn't even have to be at the table. It can be getting coffee before the game or whatever. So there's just some like shared understanding that this might be a possibility that I want to explore, might be something that also alleviates some tension in that moment. So I know like what the outcome might be, and that we've already kind of addressed it, so we're on the same page when it happens in the game. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking about this too much.
I mean, that's why we have the question, right? Let's talk it out. And I'm a big fan of the adult conversation.
Yeah. Right?
And when it comes to TTRPGs.
Yeah. Especially if it comes with coffee.
And tacos.
All right. Very nice. Very nice. All right, so mailbag number 2.
Okay, mailbag number 2. Hi, Happy Jackers. Heavy Metal Jess here, writing in about a session I just finished of Kids on Brooms. When my players asked if I had a good time, I found my response to be, yeah, but only because of the story. That's good, actually.
Yes, good.
It's a good thing, yeah. We had a huge fight this session in a game that really isn't made for combat, and I struggled. The whole time I was running it, I kept checking the rules to see if I was missing something. And I just kept saying, don't cast malignant magic on others, you'll get imprisoned. But here are some wizard duel rules. I was able to make it work with some improvising, but it was clunky, and though the players said it was fun, I found myself bored and uninspired during the fight. But it's the end of our campaign. They're fighting the evil that's been lurking in the background the whole time. A fight is what's going to happen. Any tips for making a system that discourages fighting be a bit more fun when it needs to happen? Or am I missing something? Does this system handle combat fine and I'm just confused about the mechanics? Our next session is the campaign climax, and maybe the last session. I don't want to deliver a flop, so any advice will be greatly appreciated. All the best, Heavy Metal Jess.
Oh. You want to start, Jay? I feel like I keep starting.
No, sure. I've run a couple of games of Kids on Brooms. I've played several games of Kids on Brooms. And yeah, I mean, the book tells you, it's not necessarily geared for this. I think the way to handle it, for me personally, the way to handle it.
Let's give a little bit of back knowledge for those of you who haven't played Kids on Brooms.
sure,
Before
yeah.
we give advice, so do you want to? I can.
No, go ahead.
All right, so Kids on Brooms is based on Kids on Bikes. The way Kids on Bikes works is basically you do the rolls ahead of time, and generally it's like one roll, maybe two rolls, if you really want to stretch it out. You get the results, and then together you narrate after you've done the rolls why that worked. It's not like a blow for blow, like, okay, I'm going to cast this on them, roll it. Okay, I'm going to cast this back, roll it. You basically like, all right, I'm going to cast, and there's a little bit, they've switched that up a little bit for the duel rules, for the wizard duels, or whatever they call it, the fighting, the magic-y rules. But it is not a blow for blow combat type situation. And it is not made for big combat battles in any way whatsoever. This is the most, like, I think, homebrewed piece of Kids on Brooms, because it's built to be like early stories from the wizard property we will not name, that shall not be named, where it's like kids in a school exploring weird magical things, getting into some hijinks, using magic to get out of scraps, but it's not really meant for like physical combat. It is not the later properties where it's Wizard War, World War V or whatever it is.
Basically a wand shootout in a shop.
Yeah, it's like it's so that's why it's not written to be that. All right, now give your advice.
Yeah, no worries. I'm going to add to that actually and say that in the original game Kids on Bikes, it mentions like violence is a serious thing. Whenever violence happens, there's always going to be like people are going to feel the consequences for it. And so like firearms in particular, super serious. You don't encounter it all the time. It's not like you're having a shootout every couple of sessions or anything like that. If somebody pulls out a gun, because it's with kids.
Yeah.
And even if it's with the adults that are with the kids, that's a serious thing.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's a great way to, it's a good outlook to have, honestly, if you ask me. But for me, creating conflict in Kids on Bikes and Kids on Brooms isn't necessarily about the direct conflict of a group of people against one thing. Generally, when I do that, there are other quote-unquote win conditions. And so maybe they're chasing after, maybe both of the party and the big bad is after something. They're both making their way towards something across a span, and they're trying to like outdo each other. Let's see. I have done conflicts in Kids on Brooms, but like you said, it generally like is done in a roll. And so I think I don't know. My advice would be like if you're familiar enough with the system, don't necessarily adhere to, like Kimmy said, blow for blow accounts. Try to do a set piece battle instead, or a set piece event that involves the big bad, the BBEG, and instead of using the rules for strict like conflict, like physical or magical or sci-fi conflict resolution, just go full on epic narrative and use the rules for just resolving what happens when this person is picked up, thrown 50 feet into the air, and drops 100 feet down, and somebody has to save them. That kind of thing.
Yeah. Try and encourage the players to spend their time prepping. Like maybe they have a potion that will make them look like somebody else to help trick in the battle. So all that prep stuff ahead of time to set the stage. Maybe, they make a big hole in the floor and then cover it with a spell, but, to make it look like the floor is still there, whatever it is. All these like traps and things to give them small advantages are things that they can do prepping for this big battle. And they can cast a lot of spells. They'll have a lot of rolls. They get to like have all those things. And then when it comes time for like the big battle, you're not stuck in that, okay, I roll this to hit them. I roll this to hit them, because that's not how the system's supposed to be. If you search online, there are people who've homebrewed systems for doing that. So if that is really the direction you want to go, I've seen them on Reddit and stuff like that. Don't recommend anybody ever goes to Reddit, but it's there. So it's really to lean into that, like it's supposed to be discovering this weird magical thing. You're at the end of the campaign, so you've probably done a lot of that already. So this is their home. Like, they're at magic school. They have lived here forever.
I mean, this is like, yes, there is going to be a confrontation and a conflict with your big bad, the evil who is then lurking behind the scenes. They could Home Alone that shit.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They could, like, it doesn't have to be about, like, a head-to-head physical or magical duel or combat. It could be that you've set the stage. Like, one of the things that I find really interesting and fun about, like, school and YA books set in schools and, like, that kind of, like, fantasy is that a lot of times those conflicts, especially when you go into like middle grade and things like that, they're not about violence. They're about solving riddles. They're about outsmarting the big bad in order to achieve the objective. They're about like getting defeated in other ways that aren't about direct violence, because the big bad oftentimes is someone who has so much more power than your characters do, even at the end, that like a direct confrontation is out of the question because they'll never win. And so that kind of thing, setting it up for the players where like it's something that can play to their strengths that they have been leaning on throughout the entire campaign, like, but to use them in ways that aren't about dealing damage.
Exactly.
They're about like gaining advantages.
Trying to even that playing field that isn't it all fair? Like, kids should not be able to be taking on like actual, like in Kids on Bikes. You were kids on bikes. You're 80s kids like riding around the neighborhood. If there's someone actually doing something wrong, you are not qualified to handle this problem. Like, Home Alone is the perfect example. You should not be dealing with this. Don't tie paint cans to the ceiling. Why is this how you're solving this problem? You know, but like,
Child left alone at home.
you know, exactly. So it's that level of disproportionality and that assumed continuation of innocence. It's really important, and I think that's the thing that you're finding, because you're describing. Okay, there's rules against attacking each other, but then there's rules for attacking each other in the mechanics. It's like that's exactly what it's supposed to capture.
And I think part of you certainly hit certain things on, like, hit nails on the head here, right? Part of it too, besides just kind of being a resourceful kid, a lot of that, if you're a group of kids, a lot of it is kind of seeing how you've grown with one another throughout the course of a story, how you've come to trust one another, gotten over yourselves, gotten over anything that might have gotten in the way.
Or not.
Or not. Yeah, no, and playing to each other's strengths. That's almost like the captain's, table talk, captain's quarters talk, right?
Yeah.
Where maybe it's not so much about what each individual does against the big bad, but it's more about how the kids come together, how they realize, hey, I can do this, you can do this. Let's put a plan together or even in action. They're facing with somebody, and they go on full superhero team, or all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but they realize that they know how each other works and how to best work, like how this kid who focuses on one particular kind of magic can enhance this other kid who focuses on another kind of magic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very much the, like, Japanese school children defeat the big bad, and we, through the power of friendship, we have created this frog.
One thing, if the next session is going to be your climax, one thing that I do also like to explore when playing games like that is how it changes a kid's perspective.
Yeah.
When I've run Kids on Brooms, Kids on Bikes, it's a little different because it's magical, right? There's so much like wonder that kind of already happens in the world. What I like to do on Kids on Bikes is, you're a kid in a small town, all of a sudden you come face to face with something that is just outside your reality. One thing, the way I like to end the session is you go back to your hometown, everybody's living their life. You get together for the first time after all that, after you've had a good night's sleep. let's talk it out.
Yeah.
You know, how have you all changed? How does this change how you see your little town?
Yeah. And I think the rules about like, okay, you're going to get expelled, all these things, like, they're not there to imply like killing a person shouldn't be like even something that a character in these games generally thinks of like as a go-to. Like maybe they do, like kids get scared, they think of those things, but the idea is to kind of have that innocence of you're going to solve a problem by trying to do the right thing as best you can as a kid. You're not becoming a soldier, you know. It's you're worried about getting expelled. Like you're like, oh man, they're attacking the school, but I can't hurt them because I'm going to get expelled. Like that's the child logic that is supposed to be happening in these games.
Like, what am I going to tell mom and dad? When
exactly.
What am I going to tell my aunt and uncle?
Yeah. So like,
kind of a short book, but A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking touches on a lot of these things.
Perfect.
So if anyone is interested in basically this, except there's not like a school environment, it's an apprentice baker.
Nice.
She has a gingerbread man that is now it's a gingerbread.
Yeah.
It's a sidekick.
Yeah, perfect. And that's it. Kind of captures like there are wizard duel rules because the idea is like you're gonna get mad at your bully and like and have a playground fight. The like get a little bit of a bloody nose and you both don't tell anyone about it and you go back to your dormitories or whatever. It's not that you're gonna kill them or use your magic to kill the whatever. That's not the thing. The through line there is like, yes, you might sometimes swing and hit with a little punch from your tiny 10-year-old fist, but it's not that you're going to like whip out your Uzi and like take down the army invading your school or whatever. So I think that's kind of the disconnect that's happening in this particular description. And a lot of people struggle with it because we are so programmed from D&D and so many other things to that turn-based and combat-focused storytelling. And even stories that don't start out about that end up often about that eventually after X number of books, movies, series, seasons, etc.
I had a friend run a Call of Cthulhu game for a group that normally plays like nothing except 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, right? And I knew what I was walking into, so I was really ready to create a character that lived in that world, that kind of dealt with things in that conceit. But everybody else, they were kind of creating their humorous, quirky, real world character, like they were creating a D&D character. And in the end, which is totally just like way off base.
Yeah.
Not that I'm saying anybody's fun is wrong. Please don't mistake me for doing that. But, I was certainly taken off guard. I was taken flat-footed about that. And then the GM or oh gosh, I can't remember what the Call of Cthulhu GM is called now. Anyway, okay.
The keeper, storyteller.
Yeah, the keeper. Yeah. The keeper also kind of like ran it like a fight. In Call of Cthulhu, generally, you get into a fight, it's again a bad situation. It will not end well for anybody.
Run away.
Exactly. Your life is threatened.
Yeah.
But it ended up becoming, more like, again, a 5th edition fight where this creature appeared and we started throwing things at it and it dealt with the problem.
Yeah. That's a really specific case too, because like Pooja and I played a bunch of Call of Cthulhu.
Yogurt dog. Yogurt dog.
Yep. Yogurt dogs. Yeah. Like the whole point of Call of Cthulhu is like it doesn't have the innocence of the games we're playing right now, but you cannot go up against them. You are like 1800s. Maybe you're a fighter. Like I played a like an Annie Oakley inspired like
Sharpshooter.
Sharpshooter.
Gunslinger. That's the
Gunslinger. Yeah, like your gun doesn't do anything to these like eldritch beings. It's like no, you run away and you hope you run fast enough and that they murder someone else while you're running so that you can maybe get away for the next 10 minutes. Like there's no fighting them. So yeah, like if you sit down, if you're programmed for D&D, if you haven't looked into what you're doing, and you're just like, yeah, I'm gonna fight this thing.
Although I will say one of the really fun things about that game in particular was that, yes, like your character thought, like if I can just shoot it enough, if I can find the right bullets, if I can find the right, and my character was like, if I could just research the right spell, like there's got to be some kind of talisman, there's got to be some kind of like, and it was very much like the terrible, terrible situations that led us into was super fun.
Yeah.
But that plays into it. It's like, okay, you might think you can, but you're wrong.
Yeah, there's no hope there.
Like you're gonna do it and fail.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again.
Yeah. And that's a hard experience. Like, because it's like going to a restaurant. It's like, all right, I'm going to go to this beautiful sushi place. It's going to be amazing. I'm so excited. I walk in and like, all right, everyone sits down. They start ordering like chicken McNuggets and burgers. You're like, wait.
I'll have the tacos al carbone.
Yeah, this is, I mean, also good, but not what I'm here for right now. Like, it's just like.
Oh, wait, is this a Wendy's?
Yeah, exactly. I was honestly thinking of Wednesday. Yeah. This is like, we need to understand where we are right now, friends. But yeah. I'm sorry, I don't know why. I'm really hungry. Every week I forget to eat, and every week I start getting by the end of the show on like food metaphors.
I looked at the clock and I was like, nope, it's not happening until I get home.
Nope.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like so much. It can be so fun and satisfying to find that kind of like 90-degree thought process once you're out of like, I think it sounds like the reason why you had a bad time with combat and Kids on Bikes is because you were in like what we think of as a standard combat.
Yeah.
And there are absolutely a ton of other ways to solve problems that aren't about pointing your wand at somebody and zapping them.
Yeah. Or you can zap them in a non-lethal way.
Or even, or like, you know, like you can zap them and make them think different things, or you can zap them and make them see their worst fear, or whatever it is. Yes, but like not to zap them with a bolt of electricity that throws them across the room.
It's like sleepy spell, happy hungry spell, go get dinner. Like
It's like
yeah.
Suddenly, all you can think about is tacos and coffee.
Yes. So you catch a flight to Norway.
I think my advice for anybody who's playing a game like that, where it's certainly not geared towards combat, is think of like a piece of fiction, a movie, a TV show, a book, a comic that you've read that has an exciting conflict that, or something you found exciting. That is not specifically tied to a fight, you know, that doesn't devolve into the main characters punching each other until they can't punch anymore.
Yeah.
And kind of spin that to your conceit, whether it's sci-fi, whether it's magic, whether it's, you know, medieval fantasy, whether it's, you know, whatever it happens to be, modern day.
Yeah. And that's where I think middle grade and young adult books will really serve you super well.
Yeah.
Like books that are actually geared towards the younger side of that rather than your, like, because a lot of young adult books, yes, have like those higher stakes and violence is unavoidable and all of that. But if you look towards the younger set, and the same goes for like television shows or movies that are geared towards like a younger audience, that you'll notice like the through line of like of having to creatively solve problems when you are in a situation that you are dealing with somebody who has infinitely more power than you do in a situation and always will because they are an adult while you are a child.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's not to say your big bad is even an adult, but
yeah, once the big bad crosses into the realm of even if they are still a child who's willing to behave as an adult. That's kind of the same thing. And sometimes that can be the reason they are the big bad. And that can be very motivating and very compelling storytelling. You need to lean into helping your players not become that. And that needs to be like part of the theme. And that's one of the kind of the themes of these stories. Like, you can fight against these forces without becoming like them. And that's something I've literally said stuff like that to people and to kids in their faces, but like that needs to be something like whether you do that as a GM in a meta way, or if you do that as their favorite teacher in an in-game way, when they're like, if you do this, you will be just like so and so. Is that what you want? Do you think that will make this school a better place? Sorry, I'm really bringing in my teacher voice at the moment.
I was like, teacher voice.
Yeah, but have those things, because that needs to be a choice. Kids on Brooms actually has a thing where if a PC kills another person, even an NPC, they become an NPC. You can't play them anymore if you go rules as written. So that's like a huge decision, and that's something where like if they really do lean into it, maybe that character spirals off and is the next big bad. They've crossed the line. They've, betrayed like what the school's about, what their friends are about, this whole thing. So that needs to have that reverberating consequences that show that is not the path that kids should be taking. And I don't say that as like an adult saying that. I'm saying that as like, that's the theme of the game and that's what it's written as.
And it is the end of Jess's campaign. So
yeah.
Maybe it is like that the option to have a bad ending is on the table.
Yeah.
Or at least bad consequences for some of the characters.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, yeah, that's what I mean by
Yeah.
it's like when you get to your epilogue, it sucks.
Yeah, it can be an amazing ending with bad, like, sad things for the other characters.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah. So, please tell us how it goes. I want to know.
I want to
Yeah, I
know.
know.
I'm like, hopefully we didn't miss it.
I know this is a few weeks, not too long ago. It was like 2 weeks ago we got the email. So hopefully it's not too late. We'll see.
Well, if it hasn't happened, then we're excited to hear about it. If it has happened, we're still excited to hear about it.
Yeah, exactly. Tell us what you did.
Tell us in the mailbag.
Yes. All right. Thank you for joining us for season 33, episode 23 of the Happy Jacks RPG podcast. Please support our amazing indie designer of the month, Stephanie Bryant, and you can find her games on DriveThruRPG if you search her name. Thank you to our chat mod, James V, and to our amazing Patreons who keep us ad-free and independent. You can join their amazing ranks at happyjacks.org/Patreon. If you've joined lately, we've had some new joiners. Thank you so much. Please make sure you fill out the survey so that we can add you to our end of the show credits. We can't do that automatically through Patreon because they just give us your legal name. So please give us permission on what name you'd like us to actually list on the credits there. My name is Kimmy.
I'm Pooja.
I'm Jay.
Last reminder, next week we are having our live show at the convention. So it's Saturday night, 8 p.m. Pacific time. We will not be doing our Sunday show. Also, Starscape is prepping to go live on Kickstarter. So if you want to go follow the page and get notified when it goes live, you can go to goldenessagames.com/Kickstarter. Anyone else have anything else to announce? Same thing?
And if you signed up if you're going to Strategicon and you can get your book signed by Jason,
Yes,
you
the
can
Democrats.
maybe play in Starscape demos.
Maybe. They are there. I don't know if they're full. They might be full. Show up anyway. If you show up,
find out.
If you show up and you're like, hey, listen, Happy Jacks, I'll be like, okay, I will get you in a game at some point.
There you go.
That'll be it. All right. Thank you all so much. To end the show today, we are leaving you with The Wellerman by Stu Venable, who I totally saw today. I really did see today. And you can find his cover of this as the Netbusker Folk Shop at netbusker.net. Tired. I need to eat
That's
dinner.
rough.
It's
That's a rough one.
It's rough. All right. See you all later. Bye.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
There once was a ship that put to sea, and the name of the ship was the Billy of Tea. The winds blew up her bow, dipped down, oh blow, my bully boys blow. Soon may the Wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. She had not been 2 weeks from shore when down on her a right whale bore. The captain called all hands and swore he'd take that whale in tow. Soon may the Wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. Before the boat had hit the water, the whale's tail came up and caught her. All hands to the side, harpooned and fought her when she dived down low. Soon may the the Wellermen come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. No line was caught, no whale was freed. The captain's mind was not of greed, but he belonged to the Wellerman's creed. He took that ship in tow. Soon may the Wellermen come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. For 40 days or even more, the line went slack, then tight once more. All boats were lost, there were only 4, but still that whale did go. Soon may the Wellermen come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. As far as I've heard, the fight's still on, the line's not cut, and the whale's not gone. The Wellerman makes his regular call to encourage captain, crew, and all. Soon may the Wellermen come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. Soon may the Wellermen come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go.